Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maritime Gateway Digital Dialogue. Today, we have a guest with us, Mr. Shailesh Garg, Director, Drewry, India. Shailesh Garg has been with Drewry for long, with 18 years of experience in research and consulting in port shipping and logistics. As you all know, Drewry is a leading independent provider of research and consultancy services in shipping with international network of offices in London, Delhi, Singapore, and Shanghai. Thank you very much for joining us, Shailesh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Ramprasad, and good afternoon to everybody who would be listening this. And thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you and be part of any such event which Maritime Gateway organizes.
Now, after 3 months into the COVID impact, what we have witnessed, the pandemic has hit almost every segment of business, and container shipping is no exception. And you track container trade very closely and container market of India and South Asia. So tell me, in your perspective, how bad is the situation?
So I think it's everybody knows that it has been tough. The second quarter of the calendar year this year, or the first quarter of financial year. So April, May has been very tough. As we know, the figures for India, particularly ports registering a decline of 35 to 40%. So overall, yeah, very steep decline in the April to June period. So it has been very tough for all the segments, particularly if you say on containers, it has been because it was just not on the demand side, it was also a challenge from the logistics side, so land side. So I think it was not a problem of just getting the goods at the port, but also evacuating them and then sending it to the final consumers. So I think that complicated the things, led to much more severe impact on container trade and also other cargo segments. So I would say yes, it has been very severe, and we have not witnessed this kind of decline over last whatever decade, or even I think before 2008 and 9, container trade never saw a negative growth. It has been a much severe than this year also. This year when the COVID impact came in, but what we are seeing is that as the lockdown has opened and the things are being relaxed, economies are trying to come back, industries are trying to start their production. The flows are coming back to some extent, and we have seen that in June. So though maybe the volume is still down by 22-25%, but not as steep as 35-40%. So there is a hope that with the opening of the economy and people getting back to the jobs, services like logistics, trucking, things will improve. And probably third quarter itself would not see any great recovery, but things should stabilize and we should move towards seeing a slight improvement in quarter three. And expectation is that quarter four should give us some more hope. Things should return to some normalcy in quarter four. But having said, there are challenges and there are downsides. So this is all dependent on how bad the COVID situation would remain after quarter three. So we are all hoping that things will improve. We will have vaccines coming in, or the number of cases will plateau at some level in India and other parts we are seeing like US, Brazil. So Latin America has now become a major issue now. So I think a lot of things are still not very clear. But assuming that we are able to really get to a situation where we see an improvement in overall situation in COVID cases, there is a hope that from quarter four things will start improving, and that will push trade back into some momentum. So I think as of now we are thinking that quarter four should give us some better results what we have seen in the quarter two and are expecting to see in quarter three.
But you are talking about some kind of improvement, given the situation that what everybody says that okay, by end of year the situation would improve. But it is difficult to predict scenarios in kind of a black swan event like this. Yes. And suppose what would be the long-term effect on container trade? If we take 2025 as a milestone, what would be the long-term impact?
Yeah, see, if you take, as we are calling it now in Drewry, as a baseline forecast. So baseline forecast is basically looking at that COVID impact would slow down by Q4, and things will start improving in 2021. So if we take the baseline case, still we are seeing that current year we will see almost 8 to 9% or 8% decline in global trade. A very sharp recovery in 2021 of around 9 to 10%. Now that is, as we just discussed, is based on all the good things happening, and we are able to overcome all the challenges of COVID-19 impact, and world starts recovering and we get the vaccines and everything. So that's the best case scenario, as we can call it, in terms of COVID we are seeing in this year. So if we take that case, then still we will not be able to reach to our current situation, the volume which we saw in 19 till 2021. So basically we will be back to a level of 2017, and so in a way we lose 3 years of growth, and we will see some growth in 21 and 22, and therefore we'll be back on track by 2023. So as you can say, loss of 2 to 3 years of growth which we witnessed over last 2-3 years. So that is a challenging situation, and there is a risk, as we said, that if we see an extended period of COVID or extension going beyond 2020, then I think things can be more challenging. So just to give an example, our alternative forecast, so our baseline is that minus 8% global trade this year in container trade. But if things don't improve in 2020, then probably we can see another 3 to 5% of growth declining in 2021. And worst case could be that we can see a much worse situation in 2021 if 2020 and 21 both are extended period of COVID-19. So there are a lot of situations happening that, okay, we see some improvement in this year, then a second wave come in. So as you said, that there are a lot of factors playing in, and it's a difficult thing to say. But yeah, if we see this extension of COVID into 2020, probably we'll see another decline in 2021.
As a result of this depressed trade scenario, I mean, already we have seen a lot of blank sailings from the carriers. So what would be the effect on carriers business? Like, do we see that they will put an end to the new builds, or the blank sailings is a short-term measure, or it is a long-term impact? And also, downturn in trade, what does it mean for the port capacities?
In all these things which we are talking, and trade declining and port volumes coming down, one good thing or bright spot has been the shipping freight, container liners managing their capacity. So we have seen, as you rightly said, that that these lines have been able to manage their capacity, and one of the ways of doing this was by blank sailings. And this is quite a contrast than what we saw in 2008 and 9, when the rate really collapsed, and then there was a rate war and everybody was looking for market share. So lines really suffered, and the freight rates saw a big collapse in that period. On the contrary, this year we have seen that the spot rates have gone up, even the contract rates have gone up, which is a good thing from a liner perspective, because they have sustained this pressure and they have managed their capacities well. And just to give you a number, we are expecting that they will, the liner industry as a whole would be making a 9 billion operating profit this year, despite what we have seen in the trade volumes. So that is a combination of effect of managing the supplies and the cost management, and the fuel prices also helping them. And so put all this together, they are going to see a much better year this year compared to what we were thinking at the start of the year. So that's a good news from the liner perspective. Shippers have not got any benefit of decline in demand because they have been paying higher freight rates. So that's what the liner industry is doing. And as far as whether you see this is a temporary phenomena when the lines want to manage their capacities for short term, but if you see that this is becoming a long term, like we say in 2021, also seeing the similar trends, then definitely we will see that new ordering and will have an impact, and which is already there, because shipping lines were being cautious when they were ordering vessels, although they have been ordering bigger vessels, and every now and then you see that shipping lines comes up with the new set of orders. But overall, there have been some better management this time when we see. So this blank sailing can come back and be an extended thing to see if trade continues to see a declining trend in the coming quarters and in 2021. But it all depends. If they see that the trade is coming back, then as we have already seen, the number of blank sailings are coming down. So they've already seen a decline in the number of blank sailings, but I think shipping lines are well positioned to go back and increase it if they want to, because they want to really manage the capacities to maintain the freight rates, which they have been successful till now.
In the backdrop of whatever we discussed, what is the scenario of Indian ports and terminals?
Yeah, Indian ports, we know that last 3 months they have seen a steep decline in the volumes. So definitely that's a challenge for them, and the volumes have come down. And despite expected recovery in the coming months, I see that this year the volumes would be down by, even if we see that next 5 to 4 months there is a recovery happening, economy is opening up, people are positive that the festive season coming in and other things. So volume should pick up. Even if we see a positive trade trend in next 4 to 5 months, overall 8 to 10% decline is expected in container volumes overall. So that's the kind of decline the Indian port sector would witness or should witness in 2020. So definitely that's going to be a challenge, because that means underutilized capacities, and some of the planned new projects could see a delay, because we don't know how things will span out in 2021 also. So people will have to be cautious when they're building new capacities and future expansions.
Will we see any shift in patterns, trade patterns, like intra-Asia trade lane, any significant changes happening? Or will there be any shift in transshipment hubs, even marginally? Because what kind of scenarios we can see?
We may see some shift in trade, but not a significant one over short and medium term, because it's not easy to change your supply chain. Now I know we are talking of this anti-China sentiments, if we can say, and people wanting to mitigate their risk by not putting all eggs in one basket. So wanting to have alternate supply chain arrangements to mitigate any such risk in the future. So there is talk that people will get out of China, they'll move their production lines out of China and move to other Asian countries or some other parts of the world like Mexico. So that could result in a shift in the trade volumes in the trade lanes which we are looking at, and there could be a change in the trade pattern. In my opinion, there could be some small impact. Okay, so we can see increased volumes coming out of Southeast Asia and North Asia, as we call it, Vietnam and other countries. Even in countries like Mexico and other countries, low wages cost centers could see increased, you can say, procurement from that part of the world. But overall, I don't see it changing it in a major way in 2 to 3 years, because it's not easy to just shift out and change your supply chains in a very short period. It's not that easy. And another thing which I have been looking at is other countries like Vietnam, for that matter, or even for India. We are talking of India trying to attract a lot of new investments in view of people wanting to move out of China. It is just not that a company or any particular production unit will come in India and start producing. So it takes time. Second, they need the support infrastructure. So you need to have a equivalent infrastructure to transport their goods, give them the port capacities. So I think the entire ecosystem has to be there before people start moving in. So countries like Vietnam and other countries may find it very challenging to build those capacities in a short term, or whether, I don't know if they have the capacity to build those huge you can say, network of roads and ports which China has got now. So probably there will be some shift, but I can't see, and that is the view we have in Drewry, is that in short or medium term, China being replaced in a big way. So I think that's a long-term strategy. So now we are hearing new terms, just in time. Now people are saying just in case. So they want to build another alternative supply chain just in case they have similar situation in future, so mitigate that. Or they are calling it China plus one. So they will still have China as their hub, but they will develop 1 or 2 other locations just as a backup. So there are different things being talked about. So I see that this is going to stay here, China being the major cost manufacturing center for some time. But yeah, people have started thinking in that line, and therefore there will be a shift over long term, in my opinion.
In India, we have seen one of the largest port on the East Coast being acquired by another group.
Yes.
And we have seen another big group selling away its postal shipping business. Of course, these things have started might be much before the COVID scenario. But as a result of this long-term pandemic having impact on businesses, do you see any mergers and acquisitions happening on our Indian maritime landscape?
Yes, there may be some opportunities coming in where you may get some good valuations, and if you see a long-term value in that asset, and you have your own strategy. So it is just not that because of pandemic, some asset is available and you go and buy it. I think you have to see your long-term strategy also and how it fits in. So one is that the good valuation if you get, so maybe a right time to see at some assets which you can leverage in the future. Second, some of the acquisitions which you just mentioned are also a larger part of their schemes and strategy. So you rightly said that it's just not because the COVID happening and they got this opportunity. So if you see one of the coastal shipping line which we are mentioning, company which has been in the news that the potential buyer, globally they are doing this. So it is not that the first time they are trying to acquire something of this sort. So it's their global strategy where they're trying to integrate with the business and then be a one-stop solution for their customers. So it's a part of their strategy. So COVID could have been acted as catalyst where they could have seen an opportunity to really get a good valuation. But I'm not too sure. As you rightly said, it would have been there much before COVID even started. So it's a part of their, and we have already seen they have taken other assets also in India. So it's continuing with the same strategy. And even for the port we are talking on East Coast, we are seeing that has been happening as their strategy to expand the India operations. So I think most of this will follow the long-term strategy rather than a short-term opportunity to buy.
During lockdown, we have seen road transport affecting very badly, supply chains getting disruption. And we have also seen an increasing in shifting to rail mode of transport. What could be the long-term scenario? Will more rail movement we will see?
I'm not too sure, but to be honest, this shift happened because there was a complete breakdown in the road sector. So I think that was some way forced shift from road to rail because you had no opportunity of using road transport because all the trucks were away from the road. So I think in a way it was forced. And then you had some regulatory support also. Like I understand that some of this movement of empties, the haulage charges were exempted and empty wagons were allowed without paying haulage charges and all that. So some support came from the government also. So it helped in rail gaining the market share, particularly if I was looking at container volumes moving by train. My personal view is that in long term, this should not change the basic structure that the road loses a major share to rail, because rail has got its own advantage, disadvantage, and road has got its own attractiveness. So that is not going to change. So what can happen is that, okay, but not everything may come back. So as I was saying, sometimes these shock scenarios where you're forced to take decisions actually break the inertia. So some people who are reluctant to use rail, but once they've used it and they found it, okay, it's working, and even railway transporters, or CTOs as we call them, they found that they can manage things. So probably there could be some percentage of business which may stick to them because the initial inertia and the reluctance has been taken care of, and now they have proved that they can do it. So yeah, so maybe probably some part of business may stick and stay with railway, but I see that as the road sector gets further and further relaxed and they can move containers and cargo, they will win back most of this volume. That's my take on it. But in long term, there could be further consolidation in rail business by DFC and other things coming in. So that would be another aspect when we see that how rail can gain more share. But in the given scenario, I think road should get back large part of their lost business.
Prior to this pandemic, we were looking at more vibrant growth happening in our neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, and some of the Southeast Asian countries as well. So what is the perspective now? Where can Indian businesses can further look forward to see the growth happening?
Yes, we should, and I have a lot of hope because it is an untapped opportunity, and you know, and I know we have been doing these South Asia seminars that how much potential is there, and because of logistics bottleneck and other regulatory aspects, this trade has not been able to really see the kind of growth and volumes which the potential it should be. So I personally are quite hopeful of this increasing in future, and we are seeing this new trade routes opening up with the Bangladesh. Particularly now we are having this, even our inland transport going via the first ship went through Bangladesh for our northeast cargo. So I'm quite hopeful that if things are done in right way and the way they are intended to with the current government, we will see increasing trade and volumes with our neighboring countries. Only you can say risk is the changing geopolitical or political scenario. So if you see Nepal or even Sri Lanka, so these may be some negative impacts. If I can see if any issue of downside to this, but overall I'm quite positive that this should increase, because as I said, people are wanting to move out of China in a way. They're trying to look alternative supply chains. So intra-regional trade can get slightly more intense, and people will try to see new opportunities, or these countries, other these businesses trying to set up businesses in countries like Sri Lanka or India, and therefore India and Sri Lanka becoming a slightly like a distribution hub for the neighboring countries. So probably there is a upside to it, that with the China becoming kind of a only option for somebody, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India can take up space in it, and probably that intra-regional trade can see an increase in that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shailesh, joining with us today and sharing your perspectives on container trade.
Thank you very much. It is always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot.